Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the incredibly chilling anomaly known as Blackwood. We're going to step right into the shoes of a driver who finds himself trapped in a terrifying supernatural loop. So, buckle up because we're about to unpack the exact mechanics of a truly baffling cold case. I want you to picture this for a second. You're exhausted. You're driving in the dead of night, this thick fog is rolling in, and honestly, you're just looking for the very next exit so you can rest. You check your GPS, but suddenly the screen goes completely black. And that happens right before you cross the city limits of a town that shouldn't even exist. So the big question we have to ask ourselves today is this: what happens when a town that burned down completely, exactly 42 years ago, suddenly appears directly in front of your headlights? Section 1. The Impossible Road Loop. Okay, let's track the escalation of our protagonist Ethan's harrowing drive. This brilliantly illustrates how the trap is actually set before the victim even realizes they're caught. Notice the progression here. First, Ethan spots this exact same twisted pine tree. Then, the same broken guardrail passing by on the highway over and over. In an absolute panic, he slams on the gas, pushing his delivery truck from 40 up to 60 and then 90 miles per hour. But it's no use. He's already caught in an endless loop. His physical surroundings absolutely refuse to change, and his technology is totally dead, leaving his GPS permanently stuck on recalculating before it just fades to black. Then, the silence in the cab is totally shattered. The radio suddenly springs to life with this crackling transmission from a long-dead deputy. He's frantically begging anyone listening not to stop. He warns that there is no town ahead, and there hasn't been one since 1984. This right here introduces our first terrifying reality. Time and space have completely fractured on this highway. And to make it even worse, his warning is swallowed up by static and replaced by this horrifying chorus of crying and screaming voices begging for help right before the radio completely shuts itself off. Section 2. The Town of Blackwood. Let's see how this trap fully closes. The fog finally parts, and our rusted welcome sign emerges into view. It proudly displays a population of exactly 312. It literally draws Ethan's delivery truck right off the looping highway and onto this brick-lined main street. It's raining, and there is just absolute dead silence. Up ahead, a local movie theater glows in the dark, and it's advertising a film that was released more than 40 years ago. Now notice the totally uncanny contradiction of Blackwood. On the one hand, you have storefronts that look completely abandoned, right? Yet every single light inside is blazing brightly. And it gets weirder. When Ethan walks into the local diner to look for help, he encounters these patrons, a waitress holding a coffee pot, a little boy playing with a toy truck, and at first, they're frozen, literally like statues. But then, the anomaly reacts to his presence. Every single head in that diner turns to face Ethan at the exact same speed. And they're all wearing these unnaturally wide smiles. I mean, smiles stretched way beyond what any normal human face should be able to do. Section 3. The Scrapbook of Victims. Directed by those terrifyingly still patrons pointing silently toward the back, Ethan heads into the dusty kitchen. And it's here that he finds the most disturbing piece of physical evidence yet. Take a look at the historical pattern mapped out here in this table. This is absolutely crucial. Ethan opens this thick, yellowed scrapbook filled with newspaper clippings of missing people. We can track the decades of disappearances: a family and a truck driver from the 1950s vanishing on the highway, dozens of recent travelers disappearing along the Blackwood Mile, all the way down to today's entry. Decades of unexplained disappearances, ending with a freshly added, Polaroid-style photograph of Ethan's very own truck, parked at a gas station from just hours earlier. Seeing his own vehicle logged in this historical record of death is chilling enough, right? But beneath the photograph, someone has written a single word in red ink: next. This completely reframes everything we thought we knew. It reveals that his arrival was expected. This isn't just a case of a driver taking a wrong turn anymore. This has escalated into a targeted, premeditated hunt. Section 4. The Truth About 1984. Our investigation uncovers the town's true lore when, suddenly, out of the shadows steps an elderly, pale sheriff. He's wearing a uniform from a totally bygone era and this heavily tarnished badge. And he confirms the deputy's radio warning. Blackwood literally died 42 years ago in a devastating fire. The blaze left absolutely no survivors behind. None. But, the sheriff explains, Every time there is a storm, this phantom road manifests and drags someone back to this dead place. Naturally, Ethan asks if the town is just filled with ghosts, but the sheriff delivers this profound and frankly terrifying truth. It wears memories like masks, it learns your fears, and once it knows your name, it never lets you leave. This chilling piece of exposition confirms we definitely aren't dealing with simple, restless spirits here. Blackwood is actually the hunting ground for an ancient predatory entity, one that deliberately weaponizes nostalgia, memory, and personal trauma against its victims. Which brings us to Section 5, the mimic at the door. This is the terrifying climax of Ethan's file. Suddenly, this ear-piercing whistle echoes outside the diner. The lights start flickering violently, and those frozen patrons, they instantly lose their wide smiles. Their faces drop into expressions of sheer, unadulterated terror as they all stand up. Now, observe the physical profile of the entity outside the window. It presents as this enormous silhouette moving through the thick fog. The proportions are entirely wrong. It's far too tall to be human. It has an impossibly narrow body, these extremely long arms, and a head that bends at an unnatural, almost broken angle. As its massive shadow falls over the diner, the sheriff strictly warns Ethan, whatever you do not let it see your eyes. The suspense hits its absolute peak with 3 slow, deliberate knocks echoing on the front door of the diner. It's such a masterful auditory cue that the psychological trap is finally springing shut. You see, the creature isn't just bursting in, it's waiting. It wants its prey to willingly surrender. Through the heavy wooden door, a soft, friendly voice speaks out. The creature perfectly mimics the voice of Ethan's deceased younger sister. It is flawlessly exploiting the exact memory and the exact name the sheriff just warned us it would use. It replicates every single breath, every tiny nuance, tearing directly at Ethan's grief and making his eyes immediately fill with tears. The sheriff grabs Ethan's arm, urgently warning him that the thing on the other side of that wood is not his sister. It never is. But as the dead silence returns to the diner, the front door slowly, agonizingly, begins to creak open on its own. And so, as we wrap up this case file, we have to leave you with this deeply horrifying question about the psychological mechanics of the Blackwood anomaly. If a supernatural entity used your deepest, darkest grief to bait a trap, would you have the strength to keep the door closed?